And I always have a free conversation initially for a client, but obviously I'm just all about collaboration. So these amazing people, and you're all amazing. So collaboration is just, I love it. What we're here for. So
from one inspirational person to another, I think we'll move over to Nick then. And you know, I know Nick has we all know he's an ex-pro rugby player, but I know he's also got a real passion for leadership and teams, and I think he's a big believer in that it's not what you do, it's the way that you do it that matters. And I've known Nick for a little while and always enjoy any time that I spend with Nick. So Nick, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you, Caroline. First of all, thanks very much for inviting me. And what I suppose Caroline, a while back, and said when I agreed to do this session, I said, you know, what do you want me to do? Because I love the sound of my own voice and I can talk forever. I want it to be relevant to you guys, so you can get some takeaways. So yeah, you're right. Everyone pretty much knows my personal brand it revolves around my businesses, but predominantly rugby. But I never really tell my rugby story. I've got quite an unusual rugby story, and it's like everything. I suppose we always focus on the outcomes. We don't focus on how we got there. And I'm eternally grateful for what rugby gave me. But by way of introduction, my name's Nick Baxter. I run a few businesses. My main business is a business called Baxter Williams, and we're a recruitment business. I've got another business called Connect. Connect is split into three, really. There's an employee engagement business where, not dissimilar to Lizzie, we go into organisations and talk about culture and talk about how to make organisations the best versions themselves. Having come from an elite sports background, culture is king. You know, I've been in some teams where on paper they're not the greatest teams, but they've been able to collaborate and build and foster such an amazing culture that we've been unstoppable. And that's more around, again, as Lizzie said, more around leadership, but equally so around the kind of culture. So that's another element of business. And then I was really, really fortunate, and Kevin's quite a humble bloke, alongside Caroline and Louise. I was on the Elevate programme last year, and I found it incredibly useful. I did the Goldman Sachs high growth program, which everyone harps on about, and the Elevate program was equally powerful, more so for some of the peer-to-peer involvement that I've got. And I think I'm a massive fan of Be Smart and that peer-to-peer bit. And on the back of the Elevate program, I was able to access a grant which enabled me to start a business called COVID Safe UK. When the legs kind of fell out of recruitment last year, I was able to create COVID Safe UK, and we're a year on. I think we kind of did like 350k in our first year, which was pretty phenomenal from a standing start, really, and a business plan that took me like 4 weeks to kind of muster together. So I didn't want to be one of those businesses that profited from COVID. So last week we made quite a sizable donation to Acorns charity, and charity is quite important to me. So whether you'll see me do a bike ride, or you see me do a triathlon, or you'll see me do a sleep out, charity is really important. I'm a massive believer in giving back. So regardless of what you get, you give back. The universe, and you give back regardless of how much you get and how much you accumulate. So anyway, I'm also a non-executive director of a business called Nifty Communication, digital marketing agency. I'm a charity ambassador for St. Richard's, Acorns Hospice, and Wooden Spoon. And I've been really fortunate I've been appointed as a non-executive director of the Local Enterprise Partnership. I don't know if you know that, Kev. So that was a couple of months ago, and which we need to have a chat at some stage, because my element that I'm looking after there is the champion the SME community within Worcestershire, and that's through the Growth Hub. So that's me. What I want to talk about today is my rugby story, because everyone always sees the end result. I've been really fortunate. In terms of Rugby Accolades, I was the first player to score 100 league tries. The national leagues. I was the only player to score 150 league tries. I played England Sevens, England Students, England Sevens at the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur in '98. I played for the Barbarians 8 or 9 times. And actually, I was 11 stone at 18, and I'm from a council estate in Longbridge. So I played football, and I was a under 16 West Midlands under 16s footballer with Lee Sharp, and I didn't get a YTS, and I was devastated. And I went to the sixth form, and I stayed at a mate's house in Upper Sixth. So this probably would have been about March, and I stayed at his house. Richard Revel, his name is. If it wasn't for Richard Revel and having a beer with him that night, I don't think I'd ever played rugby. And anyway, I stayed at his house, and the next morning he went to play rugby for Kings Norton Rugby Club. So I don't know if you know Kings Norton Rugby Club, Junction 2, the M42 Hopwood Services, that's where they're based. And I remember going to the Bunbury Road, if anyone knows that, in Northfield, to get his lift from a guy called Chris Cooksey. And he said, "This is Nick, he's my mate from school, he's come along to watch us play." And I remember Chris just looking over the driver's seat saying, "With 3 men down, we've had 3 cry-offs, you're going to have to play." And I was like, no, I'm not playing. I literally was 11 stone. Anyone that sees me from school now, the school reunion, everyone thinks I've been on steroids because, like, I was the smallest kid in the year, and, like, literally I'm 17 stone now. And so I got to the game, and I can't tell you the fear and the trepidation. So, like, I didn't even know the difference between rugby union and rugby league. I didn't even know the captain of rugby union was. I was a soccer player. I was a rough-ass Premier life. I was a soccer player. I wasn't interested in rugby at all. So anyway, we turned up, and we turned up at a club called Old Coventrians on the A45 as you go through Coventry opposite, the same as in the casino there. And they just said to me that my team talk essentially was, if anyone runs at you, grab them round the waist and hold on really tight. And if you get the ball, just listen to where we're going to go, and we'll tell you where to run. I was thinking, can't really be that hard. And I got the ball. I got the ball like within 5 minutes of the game, and I was pretty quick. I was like 200 meters, so I was pretty quick. But I was more scared than quick, and I literally ran around people and got over the try line and threw the ball down like American football, and went to high five my teammates who were looking at me like, "What are you doing? What have you done?" I said, "What?" He said, "No, you've got to place the ball down." So about 5 minutes later, I get the ball again, and I score. So I get over the try line, but instead of putting the ball down over the try line, I go over the dead ball line, which is the line at the end of the pitch, and then put the ball down. So I'm high-fiving again. No one's giving me a high five, and I figure what's going on. And then at the third time, I actually scored. I scored, and that was my first try. So 2 minutes before the end of the game, I'm thinking, this isn't too bad, I don't mind rugby. And then I get my first tackle. So this guy's running towards me, and I remember grabbing round the waist and hold on tight. So I grabbed him round the waist, and anyone that knows me from my rugby career knows I wasn't a massive tackler. And so I grabbed him round the waist, but I didn't hold on tight, and he kept on running, and the back of his heel caught my mouth here. And the flap of skin that's behind your tongue never grew back. It literally came out. My lip was out here. We finished the game, and I just thought, I love this game. I love this game of rugby. And I went home. My mum obviously hadn't, so my mum and dad hadn't seen me since the day before. I rocked up to the front door, with like bruises on my face, my lip out here. And my mum was like, "What's happened? Have you been in the fight?" And I remember this day. My mum reminded me this earlier in the year. She said, "You looked up and said, 'No, I've just found rugby, and I'm going to be a rugby player.'" And my old man was like, "You're not playing rugby if that's what it's going to do to you," because my parents were really big into academia. And so that would have been the March. I went back the following week to play. I remember saying, who was a fullback that was helping me through this game? And they were like, "No, he played for Old Coventry, and we had to borrow 2 players from them." I was like, "He was really helpful. Who do I thank?" And they said, "Oh, he was a teammate from the other team." And I played 5 more games till April, middle of April, and then the season finished. And so I was off to university. I went to university. I did a degree in business studies and marketing. And I remember before I went to university, I got a phone call from the coach, Phil Maynard, who subsequently was the coach of Worcester. And he said, "Nick, I've heard you've been playing in the Colts. Here's some really good things. We'd like you to come and play for the first team." I was like, "No, the first team of Kings Norton." You've got to remember, there's tiers in rugby. The Premiership being the first tier. Kings Norton were like the 13th, 14th tier. Like that. It's like Sunday League football in terms of the Premiership in football. But I was absolutely over the moon. I said, "Okay, I'll do it." I said, "We'll pay your train fare," and I said, "Okay." So I went to university, and all the boys at university, there were 3 or 4 lads at university that were playing at clubs, like National League clubs. But the lads at university were just interested on getting on the smash. And by Christmas, they just couldn't be bothered going back to the club, and they just played for the university. And they used to take the mickey out of me because I used to cycle to the train station at Derby train station, 3 or 4 miles, park my bike up, get the train from Derby to Birmingham to Longbridge. And then my mum and dad didn't have a car, so I used to have to thumb a lift, thumb a lift towards Hopwood Services. So I'm walking on the road going towards literally that, thumbing a lift. And I did that. And they were taking them and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You know what? And rugby wasn't professional then. I said, I just want to play rugby. And these guys are giving me an opportunity. I want to play. And I remember being on a train the Freshers' Week, and I'd scored 6 tries against Pershore in my very first senior game for Kings Norton. And I remember there's a rugby magazine called the Rugby Special. And at the back of the Rugby Special, they had this regional clipping. They'd clip it into the national magazine for regional results, and my name was there. They spelt it wrong. They spelt it Bakster, and it was my name. And I just remember being super stoked that my name was in this Rugby Special magazine. And I was on a train. I was almost nudging the guy, say, "That's me in the magazine." And I vowed I'd be on the front of that magazine. And I stayed at university. At my 3rd year at university, I got my first England students cap, literally 24 months after picking a rugby ball up. My 9th game of rugby, I was in the county. My 11th game of rugby, I was playing for the Midlands. And it was down to the guy, Phil Maynard, who was a coach. He, in the 3rd year at university, after I played against France for English students, I tore my cruciate ligaments playing against Leicester University. And they said I wouldn't play rugby again. And they said, you've tore your cruciate ligaments. I had a reconstruction, and I was on crutches for 6 months. When we talk about resilience, at the time I used to go to the Derby Royal Infirmary, and an ambulance would pick me up from home every morning. I'd be in this ambulance, I'd go to the Royal Infirmary for an hour of physiotherapy, then an hour of occupational therapy. I don't know if you've seen one of those things they put on the knee. It's like a knee brace, and it only bends that much. And then over the months, they let it bend a little bit more. And I did this physio, and they said, there's no point doing the physio. Just all you want to do, you're not going to play rugby again. Just get the physio up so you can enjoy some kind of sports or active outdoor living, but you're not going to play again. And I remember I signed for Worcester. In the Bull in Kings Norton, because that's where the boys were in Kings Norton, over a fruit machine. I signed my papers for Worcester Rugby Club, and I remember them signing me and saying, "We're not sure you're going to play, but we've got some decent physios, and we'll see what happens." And I signed for Worcester, and Worcester were in Midlands 2. So you've got Midlands 2, Midlands 1, Division 5 North, Division 4, 3, 2, 1 Premiership. And I rehabbed. When I say I rehabbed, I rehabbed hard. I couldn't work. My mum and dad didn't have much money. The club gave me a gym membership, and I just rehabbed really, really hard. I ate really good food. I didn't drink for a year, and just trained and trained and trained. I came back from that rehab. I was invincible. I put about 3 stone on. I was quicker, I was stronger, and that was it. That was a start. So Midlands 2, but I'm thinking, I'm signing for Worcester. I'll find my level, and if Worcester get promoted, then I'll find my level at whatever level. And I went with Midlands 2, top try scorer, Midlands 1, top try scorer, B5. I graduated, and we became professional. And so I don't know if you know Cecil Duckworth. Cecil Duckworth was an amazing Worcester stalwart within Worcester. He created the combi boiler. So he created the combi boiler in his garage in Macclesfield, and that combi boiler became a business called Worcester Heat Systems, which he subsequently sold to Bosch for about 80 million quid. So he decided he'd always put some money into cricket club. He decided to put the money into the rugby club, and that was the start really. I stopped having to cycle to the train station, having had 4 bikes nicked, and they gave me a little Nissan Micra. That was my club car, my name down the side of it, and I was proud as punch. Literally driving around with this little Nissan Micra. I used to have to stop at Burton on the A38 on the way to Worcester, because I could never do the whole journey without having to stretch my legs after a training session. So, and that Nissan, every time I see a Nissan Micra now, I just think back to those days. And I was just really fortunate. I won't bore you with what happened at Worcester, but it was an incredible ride all the way through the leagues. Some real giant killing opportunities. And then the year I was in the championship for 2 years. The year before we got promoted, they released me. And I then moved on to a club called Pertemps Bees. And it's ironic because I'm in the chief exec of Wasps office right now. And Pertemps Bees, we had the biggest ever cup upset of all time. The year we beat Wasps in the cup, because we used to have an FA Cup equivalent. We don't have that anymore in rugby. And we beat Wasps in the quarterfinals. That year, Wasps won the Heineken Cup, and they won the Premiership. They had Lawrence Delalio, Matt Dawson, Rob Howley, Simon Shaw, Trevor Liotta. They had all their superstars playing. When I talk about culture and adversity, I was a wine merchant. We had a bouncer, we had a plumber, we had a couple of teachers, we had a doctor, we had a car salesman, and we beat the best team in Europe. And we only just beat them, don't get me wrong, but we beat them, and they underestimated us, and we got a slim lead, then they were beating us 5 minutes ago, and then we nipped it. And through my rugby career, I've been really, really fortunate. Walking out at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games in '98 at Kuala Lumpur, waving to the TV camera, saying, "Hi, Mum," even though I forgot my mum was actually in the crowd and she travelled to see us. That was amazing, sitting in a changing room in between Jonah Lomo and Christian Cullen. That was spectacular. And I've travelled the world. And I suppose the reason I told you my rugby story is because everyone sees the end result of the tries and the representing your country. Not many people understand my journey and the story. And I never went to public school, and I never knew what life was like outside of Accountant State and Longbridge until I embraced the game of rugby, until I graduated, and until I was able to play rugby. And Caroline was keen for me to talk about some of the stuff that I've got from playing rugby. I suppose it's more the experiences around rugby that I've got, and the biggest thing is my network. You know, rugby has got not just the old boys network, because the game has incredibly changed now. It's no longer a game owned by public schools. It's owned by anybody that's got idiot enough to pick a rugby ball up and get onto a park. But, you know, it's an accessible game. And then I moved into business. So I don't know if anyone knows, I had a business before called the Worcester Wine Company. So basically what happened was I finished sport at 33, finished rugby at 33, got signed by Bees, which was a championship side. And I was trying to get into marketing. I did this marketing degree. I did a diploma in marketing whilst I was playing at Worcester. I did some extra CPD. I couldn't get a job. So someone said, "Why don't you get a sales job?" So I got a sales job working for Goldman as a Strongbow rep. And then I moved to Hardy's. And so I did my wine qualifications. I've got a diploma in wine. I'm like a wine buff. I'm like the most ludicrous person. Like a rugby player, then literally a diploma in wine. So like I'm a wine buff, and a friend of mine called me. What I didn't say before was I always wanted to work for myself. So before I didn't think I was going to be a professional rugby player when I went to university, because the game wasn't professional. I won an entrepreneurs award when I was at school. They gave us £15 and we had to go out and either buy stuff, wholesale, and sell it. I figured you could only buy so many candles with £15. So my mum was a dressmaker, so I bought a shed load of material, shed load of potpourri, and made these little potpourri pots and made about 200 quid. And I remember walking the streets with my mum and dad, my dad there making sure no one nicked me, and to say, "Listen, I'm selling this stuff." So I always knew I wanted to work for myself. I've always been an entrepreneur. And so when I went to Bulmer's, and then I went to Hardy's, a friend of mine rang me and said, "Listen, I'm the landlord of a shop in Bromwich Road. An old guy, he's retiring, he's selling his wine shop. Do you want to buy it?" And man, I learned so many lessons in that business. I must have lost about 50k in that business. I learned so many lessons. I was so naive. I was a 33-year-old rugby player that decided he was going to be a businessman. And it was brilliant. I made lots of mistakes. And I don't regret any of those mistakes. I don't make them anymore. But what I did do was, it was the first time I saw that my rugby network was embracing me in my business pursuit. And all of the, you know, you guys would have been there. Most of the guys who own businesses or in Worcester or rugby fans came and supported me. And I had 4 incredible years. The last year was quite devastating because it was a 2010 recession. Supermarkets got quite cute with their purchasing and the procuring of wines. There wasn't really a place without the buying power of a Majestics. And I learned some lessons. But I also learned that, because I was front-facing in that business, and the front-facing element, the salesman element of me has always been a strong part, but the back end and the behind the scenes, that's a bit that I really fell by the wayside. Anyway, I regained resilience. My business had failed, and I needed to put some food on the table. It's really interesting, actually, because one of my friends, my best friend from school, was a builder. And I just said to him, "Listen, I've closed my shop. I'm going to get back into national accounts, because that's what I was doing when I was at Hardy's as a national account manager. I'm going to get back into that, but I need a summer. I need some cash. What can I do?" And he said, "Oh, you can come and help me." And I remember working on a building site in Hereford, and there was a surveyor and I was on his little truck. There's a surveyor that walked past and goes, "Are you Nick Baxter?" I said, "Yeah. I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Putting food on the table." I'm not embarrassed about being in the building site. I'm putting food on the table. That's what I'm going to do. And I did that for the summer. I went to Michael Page as a recruit, as a candidate, and said to Michael Page, "You know, what can you, can I get back into sales?" This is what I've done before. I was national account executive at Almost as a national account manager. They said, "Yeah, brilliant. Have you ever thought about recruitment?" I said, "No, not really." And as with most of my business ideas, I had a beer with someone, got convinced to be a recruiter. So, when I went to that business, I was 38. and I was only on like 28k, and I had to drive to Great Bar. Drive to just outside of Hell's Owen and cycle in because I couldn't afford the train. I couldn't afford car parking in town. I was literally on my ass. And they said, I took this job because they said if you hit bonus, you can double your money. And I said, how long does it take to hit bonus? They said, well, it's going to take you 6 to 9 months. I couldn't afford 6 to 9 months. Like, I needed to do that yesterday. And so within the fourth month, I hit bonus, and I became a manager in Michael Page, the quickest time anyone became a manager in that PLC. Within 12 months, I became a director in that business within 2.5 years. The quickest anyone had become a director in that business. And one of my good friends who'd signed me from Worcester to Bees, he'd moved to the Bahamas, and he bought some beach-fronted land selling £1 million condos. And he sold two to an American guy that was started up a recruitment business in America. They were doing $88 million a year in 4 years, and they were coming to the UK. And he said, Nick, you come and help me. And I helped them build that business. And all the back office stuff that I'd been primarily poor at, I had to. Like, I'd opened an office in Reading. We had no back office. We had no finance. We had no. I had to sort the leases out. I had to sort the contracts out. We opened an office in Reading, then opened an office in Birmingham, then opened an office in Manchester. And before I left, I signed a lease on an office in London. And they said, and one of my good friends, a multi-millionaire property developer, godfather of my kids, and an ex-rugby player as well. He said, listen, Nick, why are you doing this and making this business money? Why don't you do it for yourself? And 5 years ago in October, so actually it's my anniversary next month on the 15th. It's 5 years since I started Baxter Williams. I started Baxter Williams at Red Point Climbing Centre. Another one of my rugby mates owns that business, and I said, listen, I haven't got any money for rent, but can I just kind of have a space for 6 months? And he said, yes, you can have a space for 6 months. And we employed my 13th starter starts tomorrow in 5 years. And I'm no more successful than everyone who's in this room. The people that turn over more money and got more success. But what I'm driven by is delivering. What I'm driven by is making sure that I'm creating really strong teams. And if anything I got from rugby is around resilience, that 12 months to get back from that injury. Anyone that's been through an injury, to come back and just to walk is a different thing. To come back and be elite sportsman, it was hardcore. Lots of tears. My mental health was at an all-time low, and it gave me a lot of rugby. Gave me perspective. We talked about it before, Lizzie, about being able to become present and to be able to give yourself perspective. Resilience, communication. That's a big one. You know, in a rugby team, you need to communicate. You need to shout. You need to have a voice heard. But more importantly, as a captain and as a vice captain of rugby teams, you need to be able to lead as well. So one of the biggest thing I suppose I took from rugby was being able to get into the hearts and minds of people, get them on the same page as you, and to create strong winning teams. And that's kind of what I've done. So the reason I kind of gave you the business side as well is no one really knows my story. No one really knows the rugby story. Some people know a little bit about the Worcester Wine Company. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud that I've had failures. I'm really proud that I've had failures in rugby, and I'm really proud that I've had failures in business, because without those failures, you don't become the best version of yourself without seeing adversity. And the sweetness of success, however you want to define success, is only really, really, really exemplified by where you've come from and the adversity you've been through to kind of get there. So in terms of opening up to anyone, if anyone wants to talk, what my strengths are around helping people build strong teams, what my strengths are around helping people understand exactly what they really need as opposed to what they think they need from a recruitment perspective. So I'm really keen to talk to me about all things people, all things team. Don't want to steal any thunder from you, Lizzie, because you're more around purpose and around vision and mission and values. But I hope you enjoy my story. I don't tell that story very often, and I've never told anyone really in a business setting before, because people always talk to me and say, listen, talk to me about challenges with recruitment, or talk to me about building strong teams, or talk to me about building a strong employer brand or strong employee value proposition. So I'm hoping you found it useful, and thank you for allowing me to share my story with you guys this morning.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah, brilliant. Really, 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 really inspirational, actually. And I learned a lot of things about you that I didn't know before. And I've got some lovely mental pictures of you, one of which is you 17 stone in a micra. I think that's the other, and the other is you making these little potpourri thing, which I think, that's, I could just picture you doing both of those things. So ideally together, in the micro with that would be brilliant. Fantastic. Well, let's open the floor and see what people would like to ask you. So who'd like to kick off with a question for Nick? Lizzie.
No, just, so amazing and inspiring. Thanks, Nick. So this is a question you probably can't answer, but had you not found rugby, how different do you think, because the skills you gain for rugby, resilience, all that stuff that's driven you to have that passion, do you feel that was in you already and the rugby just brought it out?
Yeah, 100%. I think so. Because you know what it's like, isn't it? We talk about, are we creatures of our stimuli? Are we creatures of our DNA? So as a footballer, I didn't have that same level of resilience, because you don't need to in football. And I know disrespect to football, but it's a different kind of confrontation. It's a different kind of interaction. And so rugby requires you to have a certain level of tenacity beyond a less non-contact sport. So I think rugby was the thing that dragged it out of me and allowed me to do it. Because once you've done it on the rugby part, like, I'm not intimidated by, I've recruited some really high level roles. I've recruited finance directors at Dunelm and at Halfords and at IMI and GKN. And so, like, I'm not intimidated when I go and see a CEO, because I played against Joe Malone. And if you ever play against someone like Joe Malone, it's not really, and so those experiences, they kind of help you. The thing that I probably wouldn't have had initially would have been my network, but I'm also a massive believer in is if you've got the right energy, you'll attract the right energy. So I think the network would have come. It wouldn't have come so readily available, and it wouldn't have been at my disposal. Like, my disposal is just like, I knew I was in Leicester this morning. I knew I had to be back, and I thought, where do I go? And I rang up Steve Vaughan, who actually was the chief CEO of Wasps, who played football with me at school. And so, like, I just said, listen, Steve, I'm passing through. I haven't seen the new training facility. Can I pop in and have a look at it? And can I use your office for an hour? So that kind of level, it's just like, it's ludicrous. And that wouldn't have been so readily available. And I think, like everyone, I'd have got there in the end, probably not as quick and probably not with the ease. But yes, I think it's in it. You know what it's like, Lizzie. Everything's in everyone. Like, what you need is something to unlock it. Like, you need something to unlock it, and you need some kind of stimuli to unlock it. But it's in everyone. Everything is in everyone.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Helen, you obviously had a question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to just comment, Nick, that you're very, very humble, because you keep using the word fortunate as if everything just landed in your lap. And it reminds me of the phrase, it's really weird that, because I've actually had someone say, you're really lucky you've got that successful business. I'm like, yeah, the harder I work, the luckier I am. So It's very humble to say fortunate, but I think it obviously a lot comes down to your resilience. And I just wondered, because I wasn't as confident as I am now, I feel like in my 50s, and since I've had a business, I've grown in confidence. You've obviously just shine with confidence. Did you always have that? Or has that come with experience? I was quite shy as a child. Just wondered if you'd already had that, always had that innate confidence that you've got.
Yeah, you know what? I think I have. So I've always been a really strong communicator. So my mum and dad were missionaries in the church. My dad's a pastor. My mum and dad lived in Swaziland for 2 years, missionary, and 6 years in the Philippines. But I remember growing up, I used to live on City Road, around the corner from Bentley Road Hospital, and it was a little bit rough in central Birmingham. So my mum and dad moved to Longbridge, and so I had a couple of years when I was still on the train. So I had to do a bus and a train every morning, and my mum would sit and talk to whoever was next to her every day. So I grew up in a really, just in a way where we just talk to people. And so I've always been a confident communicator. I've always been this confident. I'm always confident about stuff I'm confident about. If I'm not confident about it, you won't hear me. I'll be really quiet. So, but I also agree with you, as you have a business and as you deal with the trials and tribulations of starting and maintaining a business, you become more confident. I also believe, as you probably endorse, Lizzie, as you become older, you become more mature. And as you become more mature, less things bother you, and you become more present, and you're able to give yourself perspective very quickly. You don't live in an egoic state. You don't make decisions in an egoic state. And so you're a little bit more measured. And I'm certainly that. Like, I used to live in an ego state because I was a big burly rugby lad, not cocky, but in the egoic state, because that's what rugby told you to do. Man up, be a tough man, get through it. Absolute nonsense. And like, we're the most sensitive people in the world, rugby players. Once you get under the exterior. But yes, that confidence. Yeah, I've always been a confident communicator. If I'm confident in my subject matter, that's when you'll see me start beaming a bit more.
Cool. Sounds like your mum did a great job then. When I became a parent, I did read once in parenting book that the greatest gift you can give your children is confidence. Because confidence you can achieve all sorts. So I just stuck in my mind that did.
Thank you. No, she did. Mum and Dad did a great job. You have to meet them at some stage. You'll know when you've met Mr. and Mrs. Baxter, let me tell you. And you'll be at church the next week without even knowing about it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, Nick, very interesting, really. Thanks very much indeed for your time today. I guess my question is, what's next? Are you the sort of person that's going to stand still, or are you going to be launching new projects?
100%, 100%. The thing I need to, and Kev's talked to me about this before, focus is my challenge. So not focus as in I get distracted, I end up working 80 hours trying to do everything. So Baxter Williams is my cash cow. That's a bit that cost me a shed load of money to run. It's got like a 50 grand run rate every month to even open the door. So that's the bit that I have to focus on, because that's where 13 livelihoods stay. Connect is more consultancy. So I've got a number of practitioners that come and deliver those employee engagement programs. And then COVID Safe UK, I've just got a head of sales now for that. COVID Safe UK has probably got 6 to 12 months left. It's mainly around testing now. So my next thing is around diversity and inclusion. That's my next project. So I already do some work with organisations around making sure that they're reaching a diverse pool of candidates in the language they use, the tonality they use, the pools that they're fishing in, and the way that they're trying to attract more diverse candidates. But I think there's a business there, 100%. I've just put a pitch into a local, one of the biggest borough councils in London, around them engaging slightly closer with their community and reaching out to a more diverse candidate pool. So, and I'm really passionate about that. I'm really passionate about, obviously for obvious reasons, I'm really passionate about diversity, but not as a tick boxing exercise, as in organisations' DNA is stronger with diversity. And so that's my next one. So I've bought diverseuniverse.co.uk.com, and I really like the diverse city. So I bought diverse.city, so the diversity. So that's going to be the next one. We're just coming up with a program. We're coming up with, because it's like identifying what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. That's what we're doing at the moment. But trying to do that in the most aggressive and busy recruitment time ever known to man, with 1 million open vacancies out in the ether, is very difficult. And I've got a young family as well, who are quite demanding, and rightly so. So yes, that's the next one, Andy. So watch your space. New year, my diversity element. I think I'll keep that as a separate business, as opposed to putting it under Baxter Williams.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Good luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll have to get the diversity dance group to do you a video or something.
You know what? I like that, Kev. I like that. That's a good idea. In fact, I'm going to do it myself. You haven't seen me on the dance floor yet, have you?
Well, that's where my thought process started, but then I thought, no, maybe.
Yeah, I'll get a professional in.
Yeah, good. All right. Any other questions for Nick? I think we're about done. Yeah, really, really fascinating, Nick. Really, really enjoyed that. Are you familiar with the podcast that Jake Humphries does called High Performance?
No, I'm not. And I'm really big on my podcast, so please share it with me on email and I'll have a look at it.
Right, here you go. I'll put it into the chat. So it'll be this is the website, but you'll be able to get to the oh, it's not copied. Hang on, why is it not doing that? Here we go. Oh, that should work. You'll be able to get to the actual podcast itself. Yeah, there you go. From that, it's fantastic. So Jake Humphries, is the presenter, he actually owns a production company, but he does it. He's got a psychologist that's with him as well. It's all around, as you would guess from the name, high performance, and they interview people from the sports world, people from the business world that have made some significant achievements. So, you know, they've had people like Toto Wolff, and all sorts of great people. Is it Sir Ian? Is it McGeehan? Is that how you pronounce it? Or
McGeehan? Yeah, McGeehan. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's on there as well. It's fascinating. I think everybody would enjoy that. I listen to that on my dog walks and things like that. And there's always some great stuff, because those I think what's really clear and come out from what your talk, Nick, is that there are so many parallels between strong leadership and high performance, that from the business world and the sports world, you know, and you know, particularly the sports into the business world, that it's so relevant. All those experiences that you've had and other people have too. So yeah, it's a good podcast. And Nick, again, would just like to thank you very much for your time today and sharing it with us. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to go now so I can see the guys outside my door. Kev,
all
let's
right,
catch
brilliant.
up soon. If anybody wants to catch up with me, Kev, feel free to share my email with these guys. And I've also got a box at Warriors through my Connect business. It was a 30-man box. It's now a 40-man box this year. So if anybody wants to come along, just give me a shout. We'd love to have you there.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah? All right. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.
See you soon.